Welcome to the Daily History Chronicle. Each day, we travel back to discover a pivotal moment that changed the world. These aren't just dates and facts. They're stories of courage, conflict, innovation, and consequence that still echo through our lives today. Are you ready to explore? Let's see what happened on this day in history.
This is the Daily History Chronicle, where we explore the moments that shaped our world and discover why they still matter today. I'm Richard Backus, publisher of University Teaching Edition, and every day I get to share a piece of history that I think you'll find as fascinating as I do. On February 8th, 1587, at 8 o'clock in the morning, an executioner raised his axe in the great hall of Fotheringhay Castle and swung at the neck of an anointed queen. It was the first time in European history that a reigning monarch had been legally executed. The woman kneeling at the block was Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots, and she had spent the last 19 years as a prisoner of her own cousin. And here's what fascinates me about this moment. Elizabeth I, the woman who signed Mary's death warrant, spent the rest of her life insisting she never meant for it to happen. She threw the man who delivered the warrant into the Tower of London. She refused audiences with her closest advisors for months. She may have been lying. She may have been telling the truth. The evidence suggests something more troubling, that she wanted Mary dead, but couldn't bear to be the one who killed her. Picture this: a scaffold draped in black cloth, erected in the great hall of Fotheringhay Castle. 300 witnesses packed into the room. 2 stools for the Earls of Shrewsbury and Kent, who would supervise the execution. 1 cushion for Mary to kneel upon, and the block, a simple wooden block where a queen would place her head. Mary entered the hall, dressed in black, but everyone in that room knew what was underneath. When her ladies helped her remove her outer garments, the crowd gasped. She wore a crimson petticoat and crimson sleeves, the liturgical color of martyrdom in the Catholic Church. She had dressed for this moment. She was making a statement. "I never had such grooms before," she said with a smile, as the executioner and his assistant helped her disrobe, "nor ever put off my clothes before such a company." She was 44 years old. She had been Queen of Scotland since she was 6 days old, Queen Consort of France at 16, a prisoner since 25, and now, finally, she was done. But to understand why Mary Stuart died that morning, you have to understand a rivalry that had consumed 2 queens for nearly 3 decades. Mary and Elizabeth were first cousins once removed, both granddaughters of Henry VII. But to Catholic Europe, Elizabeth was illegitimate, the bastard daughter of Anne Boleyn, whose marriage to Henry VIII the Church never recognized. And if Elizabeth was illegitimate, then the rightful Queen of England wasn't Elizabeth at all. It was Mary. When Mary returned to Scotland in 1560 after her first husband's death, Elizabeth offered to recognize her as heir if she would give up any claim to the English throne during Elizabeth's lifetime. Mary refused. She wanted to be named heir outright. And Elizabeth, terrified of creating a rival who might attract conspirators, refused to name any successor at all. What happened next is one of history's great downward spirals. Mary's second husband, Lord Darnley, was murdered in 1567 in an explosion at Kirk-a-Field. Her third husband, the Earl of Bothwell, was the chief suspect. Whether Mary was involved in Darnley's death remains disputed by historians to this day, but the scandal destroyed her. Scottish lords forced her to abdicate in favor of her infant son, James. She fled Scotland, crossed the Solway Firth in a fishing boat, and landed in England in May 1568. She expected Elizabeth to help her regain her throne. Instead, Elizabeth imprisoned her for 19 years. Think about that. Mary arrived in England at 25 and was moved from castle to castle, always under guard, always under surveillance, never allowed to meet her cousin face to face. Elizabeth's spy master, Francis Walsingham, planted informants in Mary's household. Every letter Mary sent was intercepted. Every contact she made was monitored, and Mary kept plotting. She couldn't help herself. Each new conspiracy followed the same pattern. Catholic plotters would free Mary, assassinate Elizabeth, and put the Catholic Queen on the English throne. The Ridolfi plot in 1571. The Throckmorton plot in 1583. Elizabeth's government crushed them all. But Mary remained alive, and as long as Mary lived, she was a threat. Every Catholic in England, every Catholic power in Europe, had a legitimate claimant they could rally behind. Elizabeth's Protestant advisors begged her to eliminate the threat permanently. Elizabeth refused. You don't execute an anointed queen, you don't set that precedent. Then came the Babington plot. In 1586, a young Catholic gentleman named Anthony Babington hatched a plan with 5 friends. They would assassinate Elizabeth, free Mary, and incite a Spanish invasion to restore Catholicism to England. What Babington didn't know was that the entire plot was compromised from the beginning. Walsingham had arranged for Mary's letters to be smuggled out of her prison at Chartley Hall, hidden in beer barrels. She thought she had found a secure channel of communication. In reality, every message she sent was being copied, decoded, and read by Walsingham's cryptographer, Thomas Phillips, before being delivered. Babington wrote to Mary outlining the plan in detail, including the dispatch of the usurper. Elizabeth. Mary replied on July 17th with a long letter discussing the logistics of her rescue and the necessity of a Spanish invasion. And then she wrote these words: "When all is ready, the 6 gentlemen must be set to work." Phillips decoded the letter. In the margin, he drew a gallows. But Walsingham wanted more. He forged a postscript to Mary's letter in her cipher, asking Babington to provide the names of the 6 men who would kill Elizabeth. Babington provided the names, and Walsingham had what he needed. Mary was arrested on August 11th, 1586, while out riding. She was tried at Fotheringhay in October before 36 noblemen. She protested that she had been denied access to her papers, denied legal counsel, and that as a foreign queen she could not be guilty of treason against a monarch who was not her own. "Look to your consciences," she told her accusers, "and remember that the theater of the whole world is wider than the kingdom of England." It didn't matter. She was convicted by all but one of the 36 commissioners and sentenced to death. Now came Elizabeth's agony. Parliament petitioned her to execute the sentence. Her advisers warned her that Mary's existence meant her own assassination was inevitable. Elizabeth hesitated for 3 months. She feared what killing Mary would mean. If you could execute an anointed queen, what did that say about the sanctity of monarchy? What precedent was she setting? On February 1st, 1587, Elizabeth finally signed the death warrant. She handed it to William Davison, a privy councillor, and told him to hold it until she gave further orders. 2 days later, 10 members of Elizabeth's privy council, summoned by William Cecil without Elizabeth's knowledge, decided to carry out the sentence immediately. They sent the warrant to Fotheringhay before Elizabeth could change her mind. On the evening of February 7th, Mary was informed she would die in the morning. She spent her final hours in prayer, distributing her belongings to her servants, and writing a final letter to the King of France. "I'm to be executed like a criminal at 8 in the morning," she wrote at 2 o'clock. She asked to see her Catholic chaplain for last rites. She was refused. At 8 o'clock she was led to the scaffold. The executioner and his assistant knelt and asked her forgiveness. It was customary for executioners to request pardon before carrying out their duty. "I forgive you with all my heart," Mary replied, "for now, I hope, you shall make an end of all my troubles." Her ladies helped her remove her black outer garments. The crimson petticoat underneath blazed in the torchlight. She was blindfolded with a white veil embroidered in gold, knelt on the cushion, and positioned her head on the block. She stretched out her arms. "Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit," she said in Latin, and then the axe fell. The first blow missed her neck entirely and struck the back of her head. Mary's lips moved, but no sound came out. The second blow severed most of her neck, but a sinew remained. The executioner had to saw through it with the edge of the axe. Then came the moment no one expected. The executioner reached down to lift Mary's head and display it to the crowd. "God save the Queen," he shouted, and the head tumbled to the floor. Her auburn hair came away in his hands. It was a wig. What rolled across the scaffold was a nearly bald head, covered in short gray stubble. The years of imprisonment had taken everything from her, even her famous beauty. One of Cecil's nephews, present as a witness, reported that her lips continued to move for a quarter of an hour after her head was severed. And then a small dog crawled out from under Mary's skirts, a Skye Terrier that had hidden there throughout the execution. It lay in its mistress's blood and refused to let anyone near the body. It had to be dragged away and washed clean. According to some accounts, it refused to eat afterward and died within days. Everything Mary had worn, the block, everything touched by her blood, all of it was burned in the fireplace of the great hall. Elizabeth had ordered that no relics of the Catholic martyr could survive. When the news reached London, Elizabeth erupted. She claimed Davison had disobeyed her orders, that the Privy Council had acted without her authority, that she had never intended for the warrant to be sent. Davison was arrested and thrown into the Tower of London, where he remained for 19 months. Was Elizabeth lying? Probably. But the truth may be more complicated than a simple lie. Elizabeth's entire handling of the warrant, signing it, handing it to Davison with vague instructions, then claiming she hadn't authorized its delivery, gave her what we would now call plausible deniability. She wanted Mary dead. She couldn't bear to be the one who killed her. So she created a situation where her advisors could act, and she could disclaim responsibility. For weeks after the execution, Elizabeth refused to see William Cecil, her closest advisor for nearly 30 years. The woman who had signed the warrant seemed genuinely haunted by what she had done. Mary's execution was the first crack in the divine right of kings. If you could try and execute an anointed queen, then the sacredness of monarchy was not absolute. 62 years later, Mary's grandson Charles I would kneel at another block, executed by his own parliament. The precedent Elizabeth feared had come home. The Spanish Armada sailed the following year, in part as retribution, and Mary herself became something she could never have been in life, a martyr who died for her faith. James VI of Scotland, Mary's son, accepted his mother's execution with remarkable calm. He had been raised Protestant and separated from Mary since infancy. When Elizabeth died in 1603, he became James I of England, uniting the two crowns his mother had spent her life trying to claim. His first act as King of England was to send an embroidered velvet pall to cover his mother's grave. In 1612, he had her body exhumed from Peterborough Cathedral and moved to Westminster Abbey. Today, Mary, Queen of Scots, lies in a magnificent marble tomb, directly across the aisle from Elizabeth I. The two queens who never met in life, who consumed each other's existence for decades, now rest 30 feet apart for eternity. I'm Richard Backus, and this is the Daily History Chronicle. Tomorrow, we'll explore another moment that shaped our world. Until then, consider this. Elizabeth genuinely believed Mary's continued existence threatened her life. She may have been right. There were real plots, real assassins, real plans to kill her and put Mary on the throne. But she also understood that killing Mary crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Was there another way? Could Elizabeth have kept Mary prisoner forever, letting time solve the problem? Or was Walsingham right that as long as Mary lived, Elizabeth would never be safe? Because that's what Fotheringhay teaches us, not just about the cost of political rivalry, but about the decisions that haunt us, even when they're necessary. Mary went to her death like a queen. Elizabeth lived with that death like a haunted woman. Both things are true. Both things matter. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, then please tell a friend. I hope you will join me again tomorrow for more of our shared history.